The dashboard clock read 6:47 a.m. as I pulled into our driveway, my body aching from another 12-hour shift at the warehouse. The overtime had been brutal this week, but the extra money would help us catch up on the mortgage and maybe, just maybe, I could surprise Carla with something nice for her birthday next month. She'd been hinting about wanting to redecorate the living room, and I'd been mentally calculating how many extra shifts it would take to make that happen. I sat in my truck for a moment, letting the engine tick as it cooled, watching our little two-bedroom house in the gray morning light. The paint was peeling a bit around the windows, and I made a mental note to pick up supplies this weekend. Carla always said she didn't mind the imperfections, but I minded. I wanted to give her better, even if it meant working myself to the bone. The front door was unlocked, which was unusual. Carla was always paranoid about security, especially when I worked nights. I called out as I entered, my work boots heavy on the hardwood floor we'd saved 6 months to install. "Carla? I'm home, baby." Silence. The house felt different, emptier somehow. I walked through to the kitchen, expecting to find her getting ready for her job at the dental office, but the coffee maker was cold and clean. No dishes in the sink. No sign of her morning routine. That's when I saw it. A white envelope on the coffee table, my name written across it in Carla's careful handwriting. My stomach dropped before I even knew why. Something about that envelope, sitting there so deliberately in the center of the table, screamed finality. I picked it up with hands that had started to shake. The paper was expensive, not the kind we usually had around the house. Inside were two things, a letter and what looked like divorce papers, already filled out, waiting for my signature. The letter was typed, not handwritten. Even in this, she couldn't be bothered to make it personal. "Jason, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can't do this anymore. This life of sweating for scraps, counting pennies, living paycheck to paycheck. I deserve better than this. We both do. But you've made it clear you're content with mediocrity. I've met someone who can give me the life I actually want. He understands that a woman has needs beyond the basic survival you provide. He's an upgrade in every way that matters, financially, socially, emotionally. He doesn't come home smelling like sweat and exhaustion. He takes me places. He buys me things. He makes me feel like a woman, not just a roommate who happens to share your bed. The divorce papers are straightforward. I'm not asking for alimony. Richard, that's his name in case you're wondering, says I won't need your money where I'm going. I just want out. I want free. I want to stop pretending that love is enough when it clearly isn't. Don't try to contact me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers and let me go live the life I should have had all along. Carla. P.S. I took some things that were mine. The rest I don't need anymore. I read it twice, 3 times, the words blurring as my hands shook harder. Mediocrity. Upgrade. Basic survival. Each phrase hit like a physical blow. I set the letter down and walked through the house, finally understanding why it felt so empty. Her clothes were gone from our bedroom, her jewelry box, her books, her little decorative touches that had made this place feel like home, all gone. She'd taken everything that mattered to her and left everything that didn't, which apparently included me. I sat back down on the couch, still in my work clothes, still smelling like the warehouse she found so distasteful. The silence was deafening. No morning news, no coffee brewing, no sound of her humming while she got ready. Just me and the wreckage of 12 years together, reduced to a typed letter that read like a business memo. The strangest part was how calm I felt. Not numb. I could feel everything, every sting of her casual cruelty, every echo of late nights I'd worked to save for her birthday while she was apparently planning her escape. But underneath the hurt was something else. A cold, clear recognition that this was who she really was. Not the woman I'd married, not the woman I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, but someone capable of calling our life together sweating for scraps while I was literally working extra shifts to make her happy. The next morning, I signed the divorce papers before my shift. Treated it like any other piece of paperwork because that's all it was to her. By the time she got her upgrade and her new life, I'd already started building mine. The first 6 months were the hardest. I threw myself into work like a man possessed, picking up every overtime shift available. The house was too quiet, too full of spaces where Carla's things used to be, so I stayed at the warehouse until exhaustion was guaranteed. My supervisor, Mike, pulled me aside after I'd worked 16 consecutive days. "Jason, you're going to kill yourself at this pace. What's going on?" I told him about the divorce, about coming home to an empty house and a letter. Mike just nodded. He'd been through something similar a decade earlier. "Look, I get it. Work's easier than thinking. But you can't run forever. At some point, you gotta face what's left and decide what you want to do with it." He was right, but it took me another month to admit it. The breaking point came when I caught myself checking Carla's Facebook page for the 3rd time that day. She'd changed her last name back to her maiden name and updated her profile picture. Her and some silver-haired guy in expensive clothes at what looked like a country club. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. That night, I deleted my Facebook account. The house needed work anyway. I started with the bedroom, painting over the soft yellow Carla had chosen with a deep blue that felt more like me. Room by room, I erased the traces of our shared life and replaced them with something that was entirely mine. I sold the furniture that reminded me of her, kept what felt right, bought new pieces when I could afford them. The physical work was therapeutic, spackling holes, sanding walls, laying new flooring in the kitchen. It was honest work that showed immediate results. Unlike my marriage, where 12 years of effort had apparently counted for nothing. I started working out, not because I wanted to show Carla what she was missing, but because I needed somewhere to put the anger that still flared up at unexpected moments. The gym became another kind of therapy. Iron doesn't lie, doesn't make promises it can't keep, doesn't leave you for someone with a bigger bank account. 18 months after the divorce was finalized, my neighbor Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door, crying. Her cat, Whiskers, had been hit by a car and needed immediate veterinary care. She was too shaken to drive, so I loaded the injured cat into my truck and drove them to the emergency animal clinic across town. The veterinarian who took Whiskers into surgery was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and gentle hands. Dr. Lindsay introduced herself while explaining the cat's injuries. Nothing fatal, but requiring careful attention over the next several days. "You're very kind to help your neighbor like this," she said, as we waited for the surgery to finish. "Not everyone would drop everything to help with someone else's emergency. Mrs. Patterson's been a good neighbor for 8 years. Besides, what else was I going to do? Let the cat suffer." She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. You'd be surprised how many people would find an excuse. We talked while we waited. She'd grown up in the area, gone to veterinary school in Colorado, came back to open her own practice. She asked what I did for work, and when I told her about the warehouse, she didn't get that polite but distant look I'd grown used to from other professional women. "That must be physically demanding work. Do you enjoy it?" "It's honest work. I'm good at logistics, at solving problems. The company's growing, so there's room for advancement. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and then some." "Honest work is valuable work," she said simply. "Not everyone understands that anymore." When Whiskers came through surgery successfully, Mrs. Patterson cried again, this time from relief. Dr. Lindsay gave me her card. "In case you ever need veterinary services, or if you just want to grab coffee sometime and talk about honest work." Our first date was coffee on a Sunday afternoon. Nothing fancy, just a local place where we could talk without pretense. She told me about the challenges of running her own practice, the satisfaction of helping animals and their families, the long hours that made relationships difficult. I told her about the divorce, about rebuilding my life from scratch, about learning to trust my own judgment again. She actually called your life together's wedding for scraps? Lindsay's expression was genuinely incredulous. That's remarkably cruel. Yeah, well, turns out I married someone who thought love was measured in dollar signs. Took me 12 years to figure that out. Her loss, Lindsay said quietly. Some of us appreciate a man who works hard and treats people with decency. We dated for 8 months before I asked her to move in, another 4 months before I proposed. Nothing rushed, nothing desperate, just two adults who'd both experienced disappointment and chose to build something real together. Lindsay never made me feel inadequate about my job or my income. She appreciated my work ethic, found my quiet consistency attractive, and never once suggested I needed to be someone different to deserve her love. Our wedding was small, family and close friends at a local venue. Nothing extravagant, but everything meaningful. As I watched Lindsay walk down the aisle in a simple but elegant dress, I realized that this was what love actually looked like, choosing each other not for what you could provide or acquire, but for who you were when everything else was stripped away. The irony wasn't lost on me that Carla's betrayal had led me to something infinitely better than what we'd had. But that realization would prove even more significant when the past came knocking on my door. It was a Sunday morning in October, almost exactly 3 years after I'd found that envelope on the coffee table. Lindsay and I were in our routine. Coffee, lazy conversation, the newspaper spread between us on the kitchen table. She was wearing one of my old t-shirts, and her hair was still messy from sleep, and I remember thinking how beautiful she looked in that unguarded moment. The knock on the door was unexpected. We rarely had visitors on Sunday mornings, and never without calling first. I padded to the front door in my socks, coffee mug still in hand, and peered through the peephole. At first, I didn't recognize her. The woman standing on my porch was thin in a way that looked unhealthy, her face gaunt and aged beyond the 3 years since I'd last seen her. But the hair was still the same shade of blonde, expensive salon blonde, and when she looked up at the sound of my footsteps, I saw Carla's eyes. I opened the door and just stared. She was wearing designer clothes that hung loose on her frame, and when she turned her head slightly, I caught sight of what looked like a fading bruise along her jawline, poorly covered with makeup. Jason. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, uncertain. Can I come in? Please? What are you doing here, Carla? I need to talk to you. Please. Just for a few minutes. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her enter. She moved carefully, like someone who'd learned to be cautious about sudden movements. The confidence I remembered, that assured way she'd carried herself, was completely gone. Coffee? I offered, more from habit than hospitality. Yes, thank you. I poured her a mug, and we sat at the kitchen table. Lindsay had discreetly retreated upstairs, giving us privacy I wasn't sure I wanted. Carla's hands shook slightly as she lifted the coffee to her lips. You look good, she said finally. Healthy, happy. I didn't respond. I wasn't here to make small talk with the woman who'd called our marriage sweating for scraps. I suppose you want to know why I'm here? I'm curious, I admitted. She took a shaky breath and began. Richard, her upgrade, had been charming and generous during their courtship. The BMW, the expensive dinners, the designer clothes, the country club membership. For the first year, she'd felt like she was finally living the life she deserved. But then things started changing. He became controlling. Everything had to be his way. Where we went, who we saw, what I wore. He said since he was paying for everything, I should be grateful and do what made him happy. The controlling behavior escalated. He monitored her phone, her email, her spending, isolated her from friends and family, claiming they were jealous of their success. When she tried to get a job to maintain some independence, he forbade it, saying it reflected poorly on his ability to provide for her. The first time he hit me was about 18 months ago. I'd bought a dress he didn't approve of, said it made me look cheap. When I argued, he backhanded me across the face and told me to watch my tone. She touched her jaw unconsciously. He apologized afterward, bought me jewelry, said it would never happen again. But it did. It got worse. The physical abuse was coupled with systematic emotional destruction. He called her stupid, worthless, a gold digger who should be grateful for his attention. Told her repeatedly that no one else would want damaged goods like her. Cheated on her openly, bringing other women to events and introducing them as his friends while she stood there humiliated. Last month, I turned 35. Apparently, that made me too old for him to be seen with in public. He said he was trading up to a younger model. Those were his exact words. Gave me a week to get out of the apartment. I have nothing, Jason. No job history for the past 3 years, no references, no savings because he controlled all the money. He discarded me just like... She paused, seeming to realize what she was about to say. Just like you discarded me, I finished. She flinched but nodded. I know I have no right to be here. I know what I did to you was unforgivable. But I didn't know where else to go. I studied her face, the hollow cheeks, the carefully concealed bruises, the desperate hope in her eyes that I might offer some kind of salvation. Part of me felt satisfaction at seeing her brought low, validation that I'd been right about what truly mattered. But mostly, I just felt sad for the woman who'd chosen status over love and paid the price. I'm sorry that happened to you, Carla. No one deserves to be abused. I made such a terrible mistake, Jason. I threw away the best thing I ever had for fool's gold. You were a good husband. You loved me. You would never have hurt me. No, I wouldn't have. But I also can't go back and be that husband again. She looked up sharply, hope flickering in her eyes. Why not? We were good together once. We could be again. I've learned my lesson. I know what really matters now. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Lindsay appeared in the kitchen doorway, and the contrast was immediately devastating. Where Carla looked broken and desperate, Lindsay looked healthy and content. She was naturally beautiful in a way that didn't require expensive maintenance, confident in a way that came from inner peace rather than external validation. Sorry to interrupt, Lindsay said gently. I was just getting some water. But she moved to stand beside my chair, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Not possessive or territorial, just natural, comfortable, the unconscious gesture of a woman secure in her relationship. Carla stared at Lindsay with growing horror, seeing everything she'd thrown away reflected in this younger, prettier, more accomplished woman who loved me without conditions or reservations. The irony was brutal. Carla had left me for an upgrade, and here was my actual upgrade, better than her in every way that mattered. You're remarried, Carla said, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, this is my wife, Lindsay. Lindsay, this is Carla. Lindsay extended her hand politely. Nice to meet you, Carla. Jason mentioned you sometimes. The casual way she said it, not threatened, not curious, just acknowledging my history the way mature adults do, was another twist of the knife. Carla shook her hand limply, staring at Lindsay's wedding ring, the simple but elegant band that matched mine. She's beautiful, Carla said to me, tears starting to flow. And young, and successful, I'm sure. She's a veterinarian, I said, has her own practice. Of course she does. Carla laughed bitterly. Everything I'm not. Carla, I said gently, I think you should go. Please, Jason. I have nowhere else to turn. I know I hurt you, but we had something real once. Doesn't that count for anything? I looked at this broken woman who'd once been my wife, who'd reduced our 12 years together to sweating for scraps in a typed letter, and felt something close to peace. You left me for money, Carla. I found peace. I think we're even now." The finality in my voice seemed to reach her. She stood on unsteady legs, gathering the remnants of her dignity. "I suppose I deserve that." "Probably. But I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just being honest about what is." I walked her to the door, Lindsay trailing behind us. On the porch, Carla turned back one more time. "I really did love you, you know. I wanted more." "I know. But more of what you wanted wasn't what I had to give. Turns out what I had to give was exactly what someone else needed." She nodded, finally understanding. As she walked back toward a beat-up Honda Civic parked at the curb, such a far cry from the BMW I'd seen in her Facebook photos, I felt the last trace of anger leave my system. I closed the door and returned to the kitchen, where Lindsay was refilling our coffee cups. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I really am." And I was. Carla's visit hadn't reopened old wounds. It had simply confirmed how completely they'd healed. The next few minutes unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Carla remained frozen on the porch, staring at Lindsay with the expression of someone watching their worst fears materialize. Lindsay, completely comfortable in her pajamas and bare feet, moved through our kitchen with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged there completely. "Would you like me to make breakfast?" Lindsay asked me, already reaching for the eggs. "I was thinking pancakes since it's Sunday." The domesticity of it was crushing. Here was everything Carla had walked away from: Sunday morning breakfasts, comfortable silences, a partner who wanted to take care of you simply because they loved you, embodied in a woman who was objectively superior to her in every way. "That sounds perfect," I said, meaning it. "Thank you." Carla watched this exchange with growing desperation. "Jason, please, can't we at least talk privately? There's so much I need to say to you." "Carla, I think you've said what you came to say." "No, you don't understand. I've realized what I lost. What we had was special. It was real. I was young and stupid, and I made the worst mistake of my life." Lindsay glanced over from where she was mixing pancake batter, not with jealousy or insecurity, but with something closer to pity. She could see what I saw: a desperate woman trying to reclaim something she'd voluntarily destroyed. "The mistake wasn't leaving me," I said quietly. "The mistake was how you left me. What you said about our life together. If you'd just said you weren't happy, if you'd asked to try counseling, if you'd shown any respect for what we'd built together, things might have been different. I can show you that respect now. I can appreciate what you gave me. I was immature then, but I've grown up. I've learned what really matters." "Have you?" I asked. "Or have you just learned that the alternative was worse?" The question hung in the air between us. Carla's mouth opened and closed, but no answer came, because we both knew the truth. She hadn't gained wisdom. She'd simply run out of options. Lindsay started cooking, the sound of pancakes hitting the griddle filling the uncomfortable silence. The smell was warm and homey, another reminder of the life Carla had dismissed as inadequate. "She's everything I'm not, isn't she?" Carla said, her voice hollow. "Younger, prettier, more successful, and she loves you for who you are, not what you can give her." "Yes," I said simply. "She does." The irony is perfect, isn't it? I left you for an upgrade, and you actually found one. A real one. I looked at Lindsay, who was humming softly while she cooked, completely at peace in our shared life, and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost knocked me over. Not just for her, but for the entire journey that had brought us together. She's not an upgrade, Carla. She's just the right person for me. The person I was meant to find. After I cleared the way by being so spectacularly wrong about everything. Maybe. I don't know if I believe in fate, but I believe in consequences. You made choices based on what you thought would make you happy. So did I after you left. We both got what those choices deserved. Carla sank into one of the porch chairs, the fight going out of her completely. I used to mock your contentment, you know. Called it settling. Told my friends you had no ambition, no drive to be better. I thought happiness had to cost something, had to be earned through sacrifice and competition. And now? I asked. Now I understand that what you had, what we had, was priceless. And I traded it for fool's gold that turned to poison in my hands. Lindsay appeared with a plate of pancakes, offering them to Carla with genuine kindness. You look like you could use some breakfast. The gesture was so gentle, so unguarded, that Carla began crying again. This woman had every reason to be territorial, protective, even cruel. But instead she was offering food and comfort to the person who'd hurt her husband. It was exactly the kind of thing I would have done, the kind of basic human decency that had attracted Lindsay to me in the first place. I can't, Carla whispered. I can't take your kindness. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, Lindsay said gently, but you need it, and sometimes that's enough. Carla looked up at her, then at me, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time in years. You found someone who's not just beautiful and successful. You found someone who's genuinely good, someone who sees the best in people, even people who've hurt her family. I found someone who loves the same things I love, I corrected. Honesty, kindness, building something real together. Someone who doesn't need me to be anyone other than who I am. Everything I couldn't give you, she answered. Everything you chose not to give me. There's a difference, I replied. Carla stood slowly, leaving the untouched plate of pancakes on the porch rail. I should go. I can see that you're happy. Really, genuinely happy. And I can see why. She paused at the porch steps, looking back one more time. For what it's worth, I'm glad you found her. You deserved better than what I gave you. I just wish I'd been wise enough to appreciate what I had before I lost it. Take care of yourself, Carla. Get help for the abuse. Build a life based on what actually matters to you, not what you think should matter. She nodded and walked toward her car. No longer the confident woman who'd left me for a wealthier man, but not entirely the broken woman who'd appeared on my doorstep either. Maybe she'd learned something from seeing what real love looked like. Maybe not. Either way, it was no longer my concern. I watched her drive away, feeling nothing but relief and gratitude. Lindsay slipped her hand into mine. You were kind to her, she said, even after what she put you through. She's already been punished enough. Life took care of that without any help from me. Do you think she really understands now what she lost? I considered the question, thinking about the desperation in Carla's eyes, the recognition of what real partnership looked like when she saw it embodied in Lindsay. Yeah, I think she does. And I think that's going to be the hardest part for her to live with, knowing exactly what she threw away and why she can never get it back. We went back inside to finish our breakfast, leaving the drama of the past on the porch where it belonged. The pancakes were perfect, the coffee was strong, and the woman beside me was everything I'd never dared to hope for. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living so well that your enemies punish themselves. 6 months later, Lindsay and I were planning a small vacation. Nothing extravagant, just a long weekend at a cabin in the mountains where we could hike and read and enjoy each other's company without distractions. As she showed me pictures of the place on her laptop, chattering excitedly about the trails we could explore, I found myself watching her face more than the screen. You're not even looking at the photos, she laughed, catching me staring. I'm looking at something much better. She blushed and swatted my arm, but she was smiling. This was our life, simple moments, shared dreams, the profound contentment that comes from being with someone who sees your worth clearly and loves you without reservation. Occasionally, I wondered what had happened to Carla. Mrs. Patterson mentioned seeing her working at a department store across town, looking healthier but older, no designer clothes or expensive car. I felt a mild curiosity about whether she'd learned to find happiness in simpler things, but it was just that, mild curiosity, not concern. She'd made her choice, lived with the consequences, and learned whatever lessons life had to teach her. That was enough. The strange truth was that I'd come to see her betrayal as a gift. Not at the time. At the time, it had nearly destroyed me. But in leaving me for money, she'd freed me to find something infinitely more valuable. A partnership built on genuine compatibility, mutual respect, and shared values. If she'd stayed, if we'd limped along in our increasingly incompatible marriage, I never would have found Lindsay. "Do you ever regret the path that brought us together?" I asked one evening as we sat on our back porch, watching the sunset. Lindsay considered the question seriously. "You mean, do I wish you'd never been married before? Never been hurt like that?" "Something like that." "No," she said finally. "That experience taught you what you needed in a partner, what you wouldn't settle for again. It made you appreciate what we have. I think everything that happened to both of us, the good and the bad, was necessary to get us to this point." She was right. Carla's betrayal had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. It had taught me the difference between someone who loved me and someone who loved what I could provide. It had shown me the value of loyalty, of partnership, of choosing each other every day, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't destroying your enemies. It was building a life so fulfilling that their absence became a blessing. Carla had done me a favor by leaving, though it had taken years to understand that. Her betrayal had led me to truth, to genuine love, to a woman who found my quiet strength attractive rather than inadequate. As Lindsay leaned against my shoulder, comfortable in the silence we shared, I realized that victory wasn't about making someone else lose. It was about recognizing what you'd won. And I'd won everything that actually mattered. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is no revenge at all, just the natural consequences of people's choices played out over time, while you build something beautiful with someone who knows your worth. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.